Welcome to Apartment Guitars, the channel all about guitarists' gear in small spaces. Today, we're going to be putting germanium clipping diodes into a Joyo. This video isn't sponsored by Joyo or anyone. As you probably know, Joyo is a company that makes cheap clone effects pedals. Some of them are really great, and some of them are kind of hot garbage. But the Vintage Overdrive is actually a really great Tube Screamer clone. It was the first effects pedal that I had, and it stayed with me for a long time until I ended up shelling out the money for an actual TS9 Tube Screamer. The other day, I was looking at buildyourown.clone.com and saw this cool little pack for like $20 that was called the dumblemod pack. And it has a couple of germanium clipping diodes as well as a bunch of other resistors and transistors to help beef up a TS9 Tube Screamer. So since this is a TS9 clone, I figured it'd be a fun little project to take on, because why not? So after I modified the Joyo, I decided to do an A/B test between the stock Joyo and the modified Joyo. I played into a ditto looper and then A/B'd the two based on some settings that I had found really worked well with the modified Joyo. From the Joyo pedals, we're going directly into the clean channel of an orange Rocker 15, and then out into a 2 notes cab M loaded with an orange 4x12 impulse response. So let's check out the sounds that you can get out of a stock Joyo as well as out of the modified Joyo. Interestingly enough, when I was done doing the recording, I found that I actually liked the recording sound a lot better than I liked the pedal at room volume. In the recording, it's got more output, it's got more punchy tones, it sounds crisper and surprisingly less muddy, but in the room itself, it sounded a lot grosser and noisy and kind of awful to try to dial in. I spent a couple of days trying to figure out exactly where my like ideal settings were for the modded Joyo, and I just didn't really like it. And I was surprised when I did the A/B test and looked at the recordings afterwards that it actually sounded better through the impulse response than it did through my cabinet, which could be a variety of things. The difference between a 1x12 and a 4x12 is, really crazy. So I went back and I tried again through a 1x12 cabinet, and it sounded relatively the same to the impulse response. There was the differences that you would expect from a 4x12 versus a 1x12, but it didn't emulate what I was getting in the room. There's a variety of reasons why I think that it sounded kind of odd. This mod wasn't designed for a cheap clone pedal, and just because you put germanium into a pedal doesn't automatically make it better. If you build your pedals around a silicon clipping diode, it's going to sound good if you build your pedal well. If you build it around a germanium diode, it's going to sound good. So I think that there is that factor to begin with. I think the other factor is that the Joyo pedals are just cheap. Yes, the resistors and transistors and all of that, if you replaced all of them with quality products, it would sound a lot better. But I feel like this mod just really didn't jive with the Joyo pedal itself. After doing this mod and doing all these ABs, I went back into the pedal and tried to mess around with some of the clipping diode stuff, and I swapped out the D1 position for an LED, and that made it sound awful. I can't turn the tone pot above about 3 o'clock without it making a horrible screeching sound, and everything just sounds way muddier. So in the process of doing that, I also broke the germanium clipping diode because the board inside of here is so much smaller than the board inside of like a real TS9 or something like that. And physically, yes, they're like dimensions wise the same size, but all of the resistors and stuff are much tinier. Everything's a lot tighter packed and a lot harder to get out. I think in the recording it sounds really good. I think that there are definitely some applications that you could use this pedal for. But for me, I think it's coming off my board. I might want to in the future try to do this modification to a real TS9 and see how that compares. Unfortunately, because I broke some of the components inside of the Joyo when I was messing around with replacing the clipping diodes, I can't really A/B them the way that I would like to unless I buy a whole nother Joyo and do the modification again. And I'll be totally honest, it's just really not worth my time to continue to mess with this cheap pedal. It was a lot of fun, and if you're just looking for something to do or you want to mod a pedal that isn't going to cost you a lot of money, I think it might be worth it then. But if you're looking to get the Dumble modded TS9 tone out of a Joyo, I think you're going to be disappointed. It becomes really unwieldy. The drive really only works between 9 o'clock and noon. After that, it just turns into a muddy mess. The volume is definitely a huge improvement. Like the output is significantly higher. I feel like I lose a lot of sensitivity on the tone knob, which I think is counterintuitive. I think it's the opposite of what the mod is supposed to do. So, and all of that could be that I might have damaged the board or something like that. Like I said before, the board is really tight, and getting things off of it was a lot harder than it would be trying to get off of a real TS9. I am by no means an expert at modding pedals or soldering or messing around with PCB boards. I've only modded a couple of pedals, and this is the first time I've tried to mod a really cheap pedal. In my experience with modding other pedals that aren't cheap clones, the PCB boards have better components inside of them. They're a little bit easier to remove. They're not these itsy bitsy tiny little resistors that are very difficult to get off the board. So is it worth modifying a Joyo pedal? Short answer, no. Long answer, no, maybe. it's really up to you if you want to spend the money to modify something this cheap. I think that you'd be better off spending the $50 that it costs for the pedal and the modification to buy something that is a little bit closer to the tone you're looking for. If you like this video, please leave a like. If you want to see more like it, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and in the comments, let me know about any cheap pedals that you've modded and whether they were successful or not. Stick around for more content, check out my other videos, and have a good one. That's all I got.